today with a true Arizona drag racing legend, Mr. Gene Rickard. Uh, Gene, so many great memories of the cars you had and campaigned and made a lot of noise, burned a lot of fuel, had a lot of good time.
Did.
Uh, where are you originally from?
I'm from Oklahoma,
Whereabouts?
Purcell, which is just south of Oklahoma City. And then I really spent the last 4 or 5 years up around Oklahoma City. And then
In the city.
yeah, and then in 1960 we moved to Phoenix.
What brought you out here?
My dad was a civil service worker for the Air Force, and he quit that job and he got a job up in Arizona. We had some relatives up in Globe that were really close, and my next to youngest brother had asthma so bad in Oklahoma that they told the family, he's going to die if you don't get him out of here. Well, where do you go? Well, we had an opportunity. We came to Phoenix.
So what was your first thought? About how old were you then?
I was 14. I know
Okay.
exactly when we moved out here.
And you got here and you're in the desert. Did you look for the cowboys
yeah,
and the Indians? When you
Our
moved
family, there was 5 kids, mom, dad, and grandma, in a 55 Ford station wagon.
out? Oh,
We had the mattress in the back. We went nonstop from Oklahoma City to Phoenix.
that's awesome. What time of year was that?
We came out in July.
I was going to say. So you start coming down the mountain, and you go.
We knew a little bit about it because we had visited my aunt up in Globe 3 or 4 times over the years, and we almost always came down to Phoenix and watched and went down to the citrus orchards on Baseline and all the other little things, and so we had a pretty good idea what we were getting into. I'm not sure if I did. My family did, but we were coming hell or high water.
So you get here when you're 14. So you went to high school here.
I went to Maryville.
Okay. Now, was this
Actually, I went to Carl Hayden because Maryville wasn't there. They were building Maryville, and then the 3rd year, we all that were there at the right place moved up to Maryville.
So you lived out toward in the Maryville area.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Wow. So what got your passion going with cars?
Richard Buffington, Doc.
Doc.
We were living out in Maryville, and he had moved from Oregon to Phoenix to start his own practice. He had got out of school, and he had a chassis research T440 with a small block Chevy in it, with a blower on it. And where he lived just up the street from us, well, we spotted that instantly. Yep. And we got to meet him, and my brother was 2 years older than I was, and we saw Buff's car, and we went out to Mel Larson's one night, on a Saturday night, and we watched Steinecker and Ischenbaugh and Dale Grantham, Scott and Free. I think the Speedsport dragster was up here, and my brother, we both just got absolutely hooked.
Great names, though.
Yeah.
By the way, great Arizona names.
Yeah. And Buffing decided he didn't want to race the 440 anymore, and my brother built the car, a work of art. We were both teenagers still, and put his Chevy in it, and we raced it as a dragster. I say him and my brother did. I was still 15 or 16, and I think we raced that. I know we went to Pomona one year with the roadster body on it. No, I'm sorry, it didn't. It didn't have the road. It was a dragster. It was a B,
Right.
C-gas dragster, supercharged, something like that. And we went to Beeline a few times, and then I think he got so involved in his new dental practice that everything kind of slid down. And a buddy of my brother's that he went to high school with, Dominic, he was going to build a B gas with a 413 wedge head Chrysler in it. And I knew him pretty well, and this started my first car. And we met, and he says, I'm not going to be able to do this gasser. He says, you want to use the engine parts I got? And he had a brand new block, and he had a set of 426 stage 3 wedge heads, really good heads.
Yeah.
and he had a brand new Herbert cam. He'd never even put the thing together. And he had a 426 Hemi crank, a forged crank. He had some really nice parts for the time. Heck yeah, let's do this. So we put that together, and I think that's how I met Gusick's, because I needed a manifold and I needed a blower drive. So I think I met Bill Gusick and his family, and they got me that stuff, and we went racing. And Dominic wasn't able to go he probably didn't go to 5 or 6 races with me. And he had got out of high school and was going to ASU, and he was getting a business and accounting degree. And he got so involved in that he didn't come to the races very much. And I raced it. I'm sure I raced the first night that PIR had the drag strip open. And I raced it at Beeline. I don't think I ever raced that car out at Mel's, out of Phoenix Dragway. But I went to Long Beach multiple times the first summer that I raced it, and just had a ball. And I was
the good ETs from the
boy,
low altitude and the great track.
Yeah, and then I remember watching the first time I went to Mel's. Remember Patillo and Romer in the 6-cylinder car?
Mm-hmm.
Well, they had quit racing, and he went to the races with me a couple of times and said, hey, I want to be your partner. Well, I'd had an old 671 blower that probably had 1,000,000 miles on a diesel, and I didn't know nothing about them. Well, he got a pretty good blower. He found an almost new blower. So, hey, you're my new partner. And we raced that quite a few times between Beeline and Long Beach. And then I started working at Dynamic Machine. I met Jim Stewart and Bones, Tom Homburg, and really got learning how to make parts. And I think when I went to work there, I had to cut back on the racing because I had to have a job. And we were working multiple hours every week. And all of a sudden, the Seifert brothers, that's who we used to watch race too, Billy and Gilbert.
Mm-hmm.
And when they quit racing, Billy Seifert needed a bunch of dental work, and he got with Buffington. So they traded parts. He got teeth, and Buff got all his 392 stuff, smoking deal. And Buffington called me, and he says, hey, you want to build a new car, and we'll race the 392 Chrysler. Are you kidding me? So I built a brand new, at the time, state-of-the-art. You remember Frank Huzar over in California?
Race car engineer.
I went over there, and I called him and said, hey, can I come over there and talk to you about building a car? I'm in Arizona. He said, oh, sure, come on over. So I went over there, and I probably spent 2 or 3 hours with him talking about, and he went out in the shop, and he showed me all the stuff and how a good way to do all this and the materials. And NHRA was just starting to have chassis rules. He said, oh, this is the stuff you're going to have to do. So I built the car, and I tack welded everything together at my little shop at home. And we'd met a guy racing named Larry Snyder. Clark and Snyder, I think, was the name. And he was a welder. And I got a hold of him. I said, I want you to finish weld this car together for me. And he was a professional welder, and he kind of did it on the weekends when he had time. So we had a really nice car, and we bought a 1/2-inch stroker. I'm pretty sure it was a Wreath welded stroker. And we raced that car together, for probably a couple of years. But I think I've been thinking since I talked to Bill about doing this of what happened with Buffington. Well, I think he opened up a new practice way out north on Bell Road. And I think he was so involved in his dental practice that he just really didn't have time to mess with the race car. And he was from Oregon, and he was a fisherman. And I know him and his family used to go to Oregon every summer for a month or two and go fishing. So he kind of got out of the deal, and then I drove those cars myself, and then I'm trying to think of when my first daughter was born, and then Judy was about 5 months along, and she comes up and says, I think you need to quit driving because we're going to have another one here, and we don't need to do this anymore. And I said, I agree. Because somewhere in there, Tom Holmberg was racing his top fuel dragster, and I was living out in Maryville in my folks' house. They had moved to Tucson. I kept the house, and he moved in with me and kept his car there, and I kept my car there. We had them both in a single car garage in Maryville. And when Snake quit driving his car, I think Snake realized he was going to kill himself because he'd never shut it off either. And Bones asked me, well, why don't you drive my car? You drive that gas car all the time. Well, I've made 2 passes. Yeah, I can't believe I didn't crash it. And luckily, Dave Suttles had come along, and after we got back home, and I never got down the track in this thing because it just scared me so bad. All the it was a front engine motor car, and the fire and the smoke and all that. And Bones said, I'm going to find somebody else to drive it. And I'm sure I went, oh darn, and I'm thinking, oh God, he's going to save my life, ain't he? So I had Dennis Weary drove the car quite a bit.
Yeah.
And there were 2 other. Keith Maryberry was a friend of ours, and he drove it. And I think he got a job. He was a young kid, and he got a job, and he just couldn't do it anymore. And then Mark had started working at Dynamic Machine, Mark Niver. And did you ever see his Roadster?
Yes.
Well,
He built himself and drove to the car show and won.
Oh my gosh, he had a 23T turtle deck, and it had a Jaguar fully independent suspension in it. And this was before anybody in the world, I think, ever did that. And he won one of the big California car shows. Yep. But he didn't live very far from where I lived, so we were always at work talking about this stuff, and he was finishing that all up and getting it painted. And then he took it to the car show, and then I don't know if he lost interest, but I think he got really interested in drag racing. And he said, hey, I wasn't able to race very much, and he says, yeah, you want to go racing together? Of course. So the car I was racing, I took the engine out of it, and I think I sold it to the Wilkie boys, and it had a speed shop in does that ring a bell? In Mesa.
Yeah, Wilkie's.
I was trying to think as we're waiting on all this.
Willie and
yeah.
Yeah.
And I
Willie
think
and Wilkie.
I'm pretty sure they bought that car. And Mark built his first rear engine car. And we got together. We raced that one, and we might have raced it a year, and we did okay. Firebird, or no, Beeline in Tucson.
Right.
Beeline in Tucson. And then the next car was Bloodshot. And to me, I don't know if anybody remembers it, it was the candy apple red car.
Yeah, sure.
That Corky did.
It was a beautiful car.
And it was the most beautiful car we ever had. And every year we wound up building a new car because they had to get longer and they had to get longer. And I think we were up to Bloodshot 2. The original one was nothing, and then there was 1 and then 2, and then the last car, I think 2 was the last car that we built when we were racing together, but it got repainted, it got worn out, and then the times came where I was working so much at a new job, and it was getting really expensive to race, and I couldn't keep up with Mark financially. And he could work 15 or 20 hours a day at work, and the rest of the day he'd work on race car stuff. And I got way behind on stuff, and I think he just came in one day and says, hey, we can't do this anymore. And I kind of knew it. I think it surprised me, but we just couldn't do it anymore. And he bought me out and took the car. And then, of course, not much later than that, he built another car and sold that car to Kenny Rhodes.
I remember, yeah.
With the Whataburger car. And him and Moracle raced that. And while I wasn't racing anymore, one of the problems that I had, I was supposed to build a set of aluminum castings. I was supposed to, where I worked, we had a pattern shop, and I was trading them. I was working Saturdays, they were working Saturdays on my pattern. and we just got behind, and it took a year and a half to get that done. And I think Mark got tired of waiting on that because people were building billet heads, and I just don't know if I could have done that at the time. I know I couldn't. I didn't have enough time. Well, Mark did, and Mark never really said any of that, but I just got to feel that that's kind of what happened when we split up. And well, I got the pattern done, and I made some heads, and I bought another Donovan block from some guys from some fuel altered guys in California, and I can't remember their name. You'd know them. So I got an engine all put together, and I think Kenny and Morkel were kind of getting worn down with the small block.
They were running, what were they, with that car, like comp eliminator or
It was supercharged.
Supercharged, yeah, well, that's right, right. So they're running, was it Pro Comp?
It was probably Pro Comp.
Yeah, okay.
And we'd known Kenny for a long time because he had helped me and Mark a long time going to the races. He was our #1 crewman. Between him and Steve Fetter and a couple other guys that helped us go to all the races. Because when Mark and I were racing, we went to all the division races. We went to Fremont. We went to Salt Lake City, which, boy, that was a disaster up there. It was, of course, it's up in the real high altitude, if I remember right.
Race there.
Oh, terrible.
Yes.
And then, of course, the days we were there, it was 110 degrees probably, and the wind was blowing 100 miles an hour and sandy.
Yeah.
We went to Orange County. We went to all those races. That's why and we went back to Indy, I think, 3 years in a row.
You had a good time. Remember you going to Indy?
Oh, yeah.
It was a big deal. So before the rear motor car, you had the front motor car.
Yep.
And it was an A-gas dragster, if I
Yep.
remember.
Yep.
It was one of the loudest cars I ever remember.
Really?
It was like, because it was gas and supercharged.
Yeah.
You know, I think the nitro deadened,
It may.
And the gas was just really loud. But that was the first car I really remember going to the races going.
Yeah.
That was my favorite car at the time.
Yep.
It really was. That was a great car. In the then you moved on to the rear motor cars, but
Yeah.
that's the car I will always remember you guys partnering in when I first met you guys.
Okay. Yeah.
That was it was a great ride. You worked at Dynamic Machine.
Oh, yeah. I can't say enough good things about Jim Stewart.
There's a few companies in the valley that taught a lot of people to do things. One of them was Chuck Speed Center, which we just got the news that they're closing their doors after 57 years.
Yeah.
But they trained a lot of people that went through there. Bob Ream, Jerry Miller, on and on and on, that went on and did great things. But definitely Dynamic Machine, Johnny West,
Oh, yeah.
Mark Niver, all the people that and the stories you hear about. If you wanted it apart, you'd rather you build it yourself than buy it.
Yeah.
And that way you learn how to do stuff, and all the racing that came out of that. That has had to be one of the best work experiences at the time.
Oh, it was. I was out of school. I went to, they called it Phoenix Tech, but I was going to Phoenix College, and there was a class down at the Phoenix Tech, which was just north of the stadium at the time. It was called Tool and Die, and you had to be. They allowed some of the seniors at Phoenix Union could take the class, and then if you went to Phoenix College, you could take the class. And it was a machine shop class, and that's what really got me going in the deal. And our classes were from 7 to 12 o'clock, 5 days a week. And then I was working at a car lot, cleaning cars at night. I had about 5 different jobs to try to, and I was racing that very first car then too. But when I went to work, the teacher at Phoenix Union got me a job at Sperry Phoenix, way out by Deer Valley.
19th Avenue out there.
And I worked there about 6 months, and then I was still going to school. And then he come in one day and he says, "Hey, you want to switch jobs?" And I said, "Well, I don't know." Well, he says, "Well, we've got a really good opening over here at a place called Osborne Products. It's a precision grinding company." He said, "You need to do it." Darn, I haven't been to this other place for very long, so I had to turn in my notice on that deal, and oh, my gosh, my foreman, I mean, he just beat me to death. And the funniest thing is that the teacher was right in the middle of this. He knew all these guys, and that's how he got me the jobs. And he'd already told the guys at Sperry that he got me another deal, and he says he's going to be leaving. And they know what the deal was. And I still think about this. When I went out to get my last paycheck, they wouldn't give it to me. He says, "You're going to have to go up to the main office to get it." Well, what have I got myself into now? And I go in there, and the secretary, "You're Mr. Rickard, yeah." He said, "Well, he'll see you in a minute." "Well, who am I going to see?" "Well, you're going to see the president." And I'm hung my head down and waiting to get shot, you know. And I go in there, and he says, "I see you've already quit us now, and you haven't been here very long." I said, "Well, another deal came up, and you know, through school, and it just looked like a real opportunity." He says, "Well, we knew that." He says, "If you ever need a job, come and see me."
Oh, that's cool. That was Sperry Flight Systems back then.
Oh boy, yeah.
Yeah. What an honor.
Yeah. And then
That's cool.
And then shortly after that is when I went to work at Dynamic.
That was a great opportunity.
Oh, I think I worked there, and I've been trying to figure out 7 or 8 years. And Jimmy Stewart was you couldn't have asked for a better guy to work for and a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
He had the patience. Everybody that worked there said the same thing.
Everybody left a better machinist.
Oh
better
yeah,
than they
much
were when they went
much
in.
better, because we just did everything that could be done for our research, especially. That's what we worked on all the time, day and night, and it was mostly prototype stuff. Very few production jobs.
Which was always the good business to have on the prototype side.
Oh yeah.
That was just like
Yep.
hourly, deal.
Yep.
You came in and Mark bought you out,
Mm-hmm.
and you stopped racing.
Yep.
What was that like?
Well, I was still trying to put that engine together.
Right.
So I was still staying pretty busy, and we finally got the pattern done, and they cast up one head, and I said, I can't do nothing with one. He says, "No, you gotta check this all out and make sure that everything is done right." Well, I got it home, and it was warped about 1/4 inch, and I'm thinking, "Oh, what are we going to do now?" So I go back to the foundry, and I knew the guys real well, and I wasn't mad at him. I said, "What am I going to do?" And he said, "Well, let me have it." So they sent it back over to the heat treat place. He said they just didn't. They were supposed to set this on a flat sheet to let it cool down, and they didn't do that. So they heated it back up and set it on a flat plate, and it was within about 30 thousandths, all the way flat everywhere. And I cut it up and did all the flow tests on it, and then started making them by the pair when we did that. And then I got that block, and then got with Kenny, and we raced a supercharger for a while, and then they started allowing the nitro cars in. And I built a set of injectors that fit this thing. I had to make a special manifold, and it looked like one of the Pro Stock manifolds now. It had the runners that come up about this high, and I made the plates and welded it all together, and it was what it was. It worked. And then the A-Fuel cars were just kicking everybody's fanny. So we got to talking, and we needed a new blower because they were going down from the 8s to the 12s or the 14s, and I can't remember. And well, golly, they were $3 or $4 grand. Well, what are we going to do now, Kenny? Let's go look at making a set of fuel injectors and put on it. And we did that. And it never ran very good. And I was a little bit hard-headed because Mallory started making these really killer super mags. And a bunch of the guys that we raced with in California, Al Reed, remember Al Reed?
Mm-hmm.
He kept telling me, "You got to get rid of that Frankenstein and get a brand new Mallory super mag. You guys are full of baloney." Well, they weren't. They knew exactly what it was. And we just kind of gave up on it. And I realized this way too late to do anything about it.
It's amazing seeing people actually go from an old point type of
Oh yeah.
Vertex or whatever, and put the MSD Pro 44 and and all of a sudden it's a different tune. Everything changed on the car.
Yeah.
Because it's
Yep.
working that well, but you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And you had some great experiences,
Oh yeah.
and a big part of my fond memories are racing.
That's good.
And what have you been doing recent years? What's your hobby now?
I play golf.
Yeah, well, you look like a golfer.
I've been playing a couple days a week, but right now it's too dang hot. And we go out at 5:30 or 6 in the morning and play a short course right now.
Well, I like golf, but I had a hard time with the dragon's mouth opening and closing on me on my putts. Yeah.
You ain't no different than anybody else.
No, that's good. It's a good thing. Drag racing and golfing, a lot in common, and stories you can tell. And
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I'm not as good as I once was, but you know, that's great, Gene. You know, this has really been an honor to have you here and to get to see you. And I see you on Facebook and see your posts. And the great thing about that is I kind of keep up with my heroes. And then, you know, somebody once said you never want to meet your hero. Well, you are my hero, and I'm glad that I have a chance. And I am glad we had a chance to sit back down and talk. And it's been a long time. And you know, Gene Rickard, you're truly an Arizona drag racing legend.
Well,
thank you for being here.
Thanks for inviting me, and I hope I didn't ramble on too long there.
Oh, no, you're just fine.
Got emotional on a few of them there.
Oh, hey, good memories. That's what they all are.
Yep.
Thank you, Gene.
Thank you.